Hey guys, in this video I'm going to explain the fourth logic game from the June 2013 LSAT, which is LSAT PrepTest 69. This is the game involving 5 paralegals being assigned to exactly one of 3 cases, R, S, or T. So because we are assigning the paralegals to the cases, this game is what I would consider a grouping matching game. There's no ordering component here. We're simply associating things from one category, the paralegals, with things from another category, the cases. Now I've laid out some things here that I'm going to explain. They tell us that either F goes to R and K goes to T, or neither of those two things happens. So I've diagrammed that rule here with this double arrow, FR, KT. If FR happens, then KT happens. If KT happens, then FR happens. Additionally, this is telling us that if FR does not happen, then KT will not happen, and vice versa. If KT does not happen, then FR does not happen as well. So you could have also written that this in the negative form. I simply didn't bother because I don't think it's necessary. It's completely up to you though. Next, they tell us that either F is the only one on his case or G is the only one on her case, but not both. So I represent this with F in a box by itself or G in a box by itself. And I put capital letters for or, which simply reminds me that this is an exclusive or, not an inclusive one. Typically on the LSAT or statements, unless they say otherwise, an or statement will always be inclusive. So if you think back to the PrepTest 33 game 2, the birds in the forest game, if J or M occurs, then H occurs. In that rule, that's telling us that either one alone is sufficient to require H, and both of those things happening, J and M, would also have H happen as well. In this case, though, we have an exclusive or, F only by itself or G only by itself. We're never going to have both F and G by themselves on 2 separate cases. Like you would never have F on R and G by itself on T and F by itself on R, and you would never have F by itself on T and G by itself on R. Those two things could never happen. Only one of the two. Anyway, final rule, H on S. That's the simplest, of course. We just stick it right on the spaces here. Now I've laid out 3 spaces per case here. There's no particular reason that I did that. I could have laid out only 2 spaces, or I could have laid out 4 spaces. They don't tell us there's a maximum of 3 per case. I just laid it out because I can fill in whatever spaces I want and leave empty the ones that I don't want to fill in. And so I have these 4 X's here to represent placeholders for when we know that there will be a certain maximum occurring on a particular space. So for example, if we learn that F is by itself on R, we could put down XX on the other 2 R's just to tell us, R slots, just to tell us that there's nothing else there, F's by itself. Anyway, this is a pretty good bare bones diagram that you can take moving forward into answering the questions. However, I actually like to do a lot more here. You can set up multiple main diagrams that make the game much easier to tackle going forward. So I'm going to walk you through those. Again, if you wanted to just do this only and move on to the questions, that's totally fine. You'll just be doing more work over the course of the game, while I prefer to do more work up front typically and then do less work as I'm getting into the specific questions, because the work I do up front paves the way. Anyway, what do? I set up 2 different main diagrams to start with based on whether we have FR and KT occurring or based on whether we have neither of those 2 things occurring. I'll draw a second set of spaces here to represent that second possibility. So here are those 2 possibilities to start with. Top diagram, FR happens and KT happens. Bottom diagram, FR does not occur and KT does not occur. So what else can we infer here? Well, when FR is happening, we know that F has to be the one of F or G that is by itself, because where can we put G and have it be by itself? There's no room for that. G going in any of these 3 cases, these 3 rows here, would be with something else. So for that reason, F must be the solo paralegal here, not G. And so I'll represent that fact with the X's going on the remaining spaces here. Now, aside from that, of course, we have G and L remaining. We don't really know where they're going. They're pretty much open-ended. We could have both of them on S, or we could have both of them on T, or have one on S and one on T interchangeable. We don't know which, doesn't matter. So that's what's happening on top. On bottom, of course, things are much more open-ended. Things are kind of vague here. Is F by itself on T? Is G by itself on either R or T? We don't really know. So I'm actually going to split this possibility here into 3 based on whether F is by itself or G is by itself. Again, of course, you don't have to do this. I'm just taking things a little bit further. If you wanted to stop here and move on to the questions, you'd be perfectly fine. But I personally like to split things up a little bit more when I can do so methodically and efficiently. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to lay out for you what those other possibilities look like moving forward into the questions. So here are those remaining 3 possibilities here. I put G by itself on R, G by itself on T, and then F by itself on T. Of course, neither F nor G could be S by themselves because we have H there from the final rule of the game. So these are our 4 main diagrams, and we'll carry this into the questions. But before we go into the questions, let's see what other inferences we can make based on this. Well, looking at this G alone on R diagram, since K cannot be on T, K must be on S. So I'll stick K on S right there. And then we have L and F remaining. Now, of course, one of L or F will have to go on T because the initial paragraph of the game tells us that at least one paralegal has to go on each case. So we're going to reserve 1 space on T for either F or L. And then the other one of L or F will have to go on either S or T. We don't know which one. Now, moving on to the next diagram here, with G alone on T, we have some remaining variables here. We have F, we have K, and we have L. What can we infer? Well, we know that F cannot be on R, so F will have to go on S. Then at least one of K or L will have to go on R, since, again, at least one paralegal has to go to each case. And then the other one of K or L, I'll say, L/K, will have to go to either R or S. We don't know which one. Now, in the bottom right diagram here, where F is alone on T, what can we infer? Not nearly as much. We've already placed F, so we can't limit F to one of the other 2 remaining spaces like we could in the other diagrams. We know that we have, H placed already, but G, K, and L remain. There are 3 variables that we can't really do a whole lot with, except for the fact that at least one of those must go on R because, again, at least one paralegal for each case. So now that we've got everything laid out, let's move on to the questions, starting with question number 18, which is a typical orientation question. We'll simply take 1 rule at a time and apply that rule to all 5 choices, checking for violations. The setup that we've done here will be enormously helpful in answering the remaining questions, but for orientation questions, it's often simply easiest to just take 1 rule at a time and apply it to all 5 choices unless your diagrams that you've laid out up front are completely filled in or almost entirely filled in. We still have a decent number of empty spaces here, so I'm not going to take that approach. So let's start with the rule that either we have, FR and KT both occurring, or neither of them occurring. Scanning through the choices here, we see that choice A violates this, having FR but not having KT. So A is gone. We also see this happening in choice E. We have FR but not KT. So for that reason, we can eliminate E as well. Checking through the next rule, F only or G only, but not both. So scanning through choices there, we see, B is good. It has G alone, but doesn't have F alone. That's fine. We see that choice C doesn't have either one alone. So for that reason, we can eliminate choice C. D has F alone, so that's good, and nothing else. So final rule, H on S. B violates this, has G on S, and does not have H there, so B is gone, leaving D by elimination for number 18. Next, number 19. What cannot be the complete assignment of paralegals to S? So let's simply, check through the choices one by one against the 4 diagrams that we have. FHK. Could that ever occur on S? Yes, it could. In the diagram right here where we have G alone on R, we could easily fit F in right there and then have L on T, no problem. So for that reason, A is gone since it could occur. Next, choice B, FHL. Could we ever have that? Not in the top diagram, not in the second diagram. On the bottom left, though, we could easily put L there on S and then have K alone on R. That works out perfectly fine. So B is gone. Again, we're taking the four things that could occur and eliminating them, and then whatever remains will be our answer. Next, choice C, GHK. Could we ever have that? Not in the top diagram, not in the second one, not in the bottom left, but on the bottom right, we could have H and then GK on S and then put L up on R. That works perfectly fine, so C is gone. Looking at D, GHL. Could that ever happen? Yeah, and actually in the very same diagram we just looked at, we could put G and L on S and then have K on R, or on the top here, we could put GHL on S, have F alone on R, have K alone on T. Works out fine. So for that reason, we can eliminate D, leaving E by elimination. And then if we look at E, HKL, let's think about where we could put that. If we put HKL on the bottom right here, that might seem good at first glance, but the problem is that then we end up with G alone on R, which is unacceptable. Same goes for the diagram where G is alone on R. If we put the L on S, then had F alone on T, that would not be okay because we can never have F alone there. So you still have to remember the F or G exclusivity there. Always keep that in mind. So E is bad for that reason. It cannot occur, therefore it's our answer for 19. Next, number 20, if we had exactly two paralegals on T, what could be on R? So having exactly two on T. Let's take our diagrams and work with that. The bottom two are not relevant since they have only one thing on T. They have either G only or F only. Let's use the other two. So we're limiting T to have exactly two, so I'm going to put one of our X's on T in each of those just to set that minimum right there, the maximum of two, no more than that. Then what do we do after that? So exactly two means that we're going to have one of G or L on T in the top diagram here, and then the other one of those two will be forced onto S, and that works out because we're not ending it with G alone on either of these. In the now bottom diagram here where we have G alone on R, we're going to have to put down our other one of L or F on T. So we really end up simply having both F and L on T and then having only two things on S there, and same goes for the top diagram, we have only two things on S there as well. So they're asking us what could be the complete list of people who go to R. Well, it could be G alone or F alone. Either one. F alone is not a choice, but G alone is, so A is our answer for number 20. Next, number 21. If one of the cases has G and L as the only people on it. So let's start off there and modify our main diagrams accordingly. So GL is the only paralegals. Diagram with G alone doesn't work. Neither of those works, of course, because you can't put L with G if G is alone. In the top diagram, G and L being the only ones doesn't work because there's no row possible to put both of them and have them be the only two. All rows already have somebody. So top one's irrelevant, leaving the bottom right here where we had F alone. So to have G and L as the only ones, I'm going to put L and G on the top row with R, of course, since that's the only place they could go. We have L and G, and then nothing else additional on R, which forces K to be on S with H and nothing else. So we have LG on R, we have HK on S, and then F on T, and that's our 5. So must be false except means 4 of these things could never happen, one of them could. So F on R could never happen, F is on T, that's gone. Next, F on S doesn't happen. Again, F is on T, so that's gone. G on R, yes, that could happen. In fact, it must. So C is our answer. I will look at D and E though, of course. K on R, that could never happen. K is on S. Then finally, L on T. That doesn't happen, of course. L is on R, so that's gone as well, leaving C for number 21. Next, number 22. What cannot be the complete assignment of paralegals to T? So let's scan through our choices here. G being the only thing on T, could that ever happen? Yes, it could, of course. We have G is the only thing on T in the bottom left right here. So since that could happen, A is gone, and we'll continue finding all four choices that could happen, eliminate them, and whatever remains will be our answer. So L being the only thing on T, could that ever happen? Yes, in the diagram where G is alone on R, we could have L be the only thing on T, then put F on S. That works perfectly fine, so B could happen, it's gone. Next choice, C, G and K on T. Let's look. I mean, obviously when G is alone on T, that's not happening. When F's alone on T, that's not happening. When G is alone on R, that's not happening. But top diagram, we could easily put G on T and then have L on S. Works out perfectly fine. So C could happen, and that's gone as well. Looking at D, G, L. Again, anything involving G, being on T is only the top diagram. Checking that, we see that, putting G on T, G is already with L. G is already with K there. So G and K does not comply with choice D, since D says only G and L, nothing else. So for that reason, D is impossible, and it's our answer for number 22. I will take a look at E though. K and L being the only things on T. That works out in the top diagram. If we put K on T as it's there already, put L there, put G on S, works out fine. So E's gone as well, leaving D as our answer for number 22. Finally, number 23, if K is the only paralegal on one of the cases. So let's look at where that could happen. That could not happen in G alone on R since we have H with it. On the top diagram, K alone, let's try it out. We could put X's on both of those remaining T spaces in the top diagram, making K alone. In the bottom diagram where G is alone on T, we could have K on R and then have nothing else there, put two more X's. Then L would end up going to S. In the bottom right diagram where I have F alone, we could put K on R and then have G and L go on to S, and of course K is alone on R, nothing else is going there. So we have K on R, then HGL on S. So they're asking us the question now, what's a complete list of paralegals, any of one of which could be on R? Well, top diagram we have F. Of course, I should put in G and L occurring on S in that particular diagram. We have F alone on R. We have K alone on R from the bottom left diagram, and then we have K alone on R from the bottom right diagram. So simply F and K are the only two variables that we ever see occurring on the R case. They're not occurring together on the R case, but that's fine. That's not what the question's asking for. They're just asking for any one of whom could be assigned to R at some point in some valid scenario. So for this reason, B is our answer to number 23.